pretty obvious, the impact of Brexit on UK prime, well, on the London prime property market. I live in Fulham. I have friends who are leaving. They're taking their hedge funds and their companies with them. One good friend who has a hedge fund has moved to Madrid. We also have friends who, for example, are top bankers who've decided to move to Frankfurt back from wherever they were posted and not back to London as planned. So that's my layperson point of view in my little, very European Fulham bubble. And also I have read what all of you will have read, which is a general media, which has been quite doom and gloom. But I thought you deserve more than a layperson point of view for this part of the talk. So I asked a few experts, and I'm incredibly grateful to Henry Pryor, who spent quite a long time explaining the UK prime and super prime property markets to me, and Marcus Dixon as well from London Residential. And here's what they said. First of all, Henry said, well, be wary of the media, because they have their own interests and they're often trying to sell a particular angle. And statistics show, and this is what I've been discussing with a few of you here today and also with Tom here, who I've just met, statistics show that it's not all doom and gloom. That's not true that there's an overall shortage of properties on the market. But most importantly, and I think this is something that we can all agree on because I've done a quick survey here while sitting in the reception, it depends on so many other factors. So the UK's image as a stable country, Henry Pryor, for example, he said, look, you know, riots in 2014 and 15, everyone was talking about stamp duty, but that didn't help either. The cost of doing business, stamp duty, yes, it had an impact, but again, as we've just been discussing this morning, not as much of an impact as people might think. There was a great piece by Lucian Cook, head of research at Savills. I know there are two Savills guys here today. Where's the other one? Yep, John. And saying, look, it's whilst it's really helped the British government's coffers, it hasn't actually affected the prime markets very much, and super prime a bit, but not as much as expected. Exchange rates and, of course, legal certainty. So Marcus Dixon, and we had a really good chat, he said, look, Brexit, you're right, all these other people are right, hasn't affected the markets as much as you would expect. And then he cautioned and he said, yet. And the fact is, we don't know what's going to happen next because this is just the beginning. The UK is still in the EU. So he said, you've got to look back at the markets over the past few years. He said, you know, the markets recovered quite quickly from the economic crash, recovered in 2010. Prices then in London went up steadily, and there was already a sense, he said, before stamp duty, that there was a bubble and that it was going to burst. Prices couldn't keep going up this high. So there was already that sense of uncertainty in the markets. Then you had, in the end of 2014, stamp duty, and then, of course, a referendum, which didn't help with uncertainty, and then, of course, the triggering of Article 50. And London Residential, who Marcus Dixon works for, have said that they have seen some effects of Brexit already. So, for example, they said people on top-end contracts are now often coming to London and renting instead of buying. He said the prime rental market, £5,000 a week plus, has a lack of new people coming in. And he said, of course, what you all know, the sort of families, European families moving to southwest London and buying up the sort of £1 to £2 million houses and putting their children in schools here, well, that's all going down as well. Exchange rates and the fact that we have a pretty bargain basement pound at the moment have helped offset that to a certain extent. And I gather, and you correct me if I'm wrong, there are quite a few property investors who are trying to snap up a cheap deal. But there's only so far that cheap exchange rates and property investors can go with offsetting Brexit, because if you have people buying up properties but not coming and living here, and I know many of you say that now you have Hong Kong buyers who are actually increasingly coming and moving here and living in the properties, but if you have people just buying up property, it's not sustainable, because if they're not paying for, I don't know, private schools or taxis or restaurants or whatever, you're going to end up seeing a weaker economy. And if you have a weaker economy, you have a weaker London prime property market.